Osceola, and 83 to Roosevelt. Edens, 26 minutes, Lake Cook to Junction. Kennedy, 45 minutes, O'Hare to downtown, quicker the Express. Eisenhower, 390 to downtown, it's 50 minutes, 35 from Manheim. Stevenson, 48 minutes, 355 to the Drive. Ryan, 25 minutes from 95th. I-57, 22 minutes, I-80 to the merge. Bishop Ford, 50. And that's traffic. I'm Jim Calamonte. On AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, and your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center and our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
Some places could see a shower this morning. Otherwise, clouds, windy, and cool today. High 51. It'll be clear tonight, low 38. Some sun tomorrow, then increasing cloudiness, high 58. Cloudy, chilly day on Thursday with a high at 50. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
It's 49 at O'Hare, 48 in Aurora, 51 at Midway. Your next news update is at 7:30, and Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by On Target Radio. From firearms and Second Amendment rights to personal freedoms and government intrusions. Listen here Sunday nights at 9.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I mean, look, I appreciate anybody who calls Hillary Clinton Queen Warmonger and the rot of the Democrat Party. I appreciate anybody that's, taking a bicycle chain to the playground against some of the socialists, like Tulsi Gabbard did in response to being not so subtly accused of being a Russian asset.
People warned me in 2016 that my endorsement of Bernie Sanders would be the end of my quote-unquote political career. They said Clinton will never forget that she and her rich and powerful friends, her allies in politics and in the media, will make sure that you are destroyed. Well, there have been countless hit pieces full of smears against me from day one of this campaign. They've tried to destroy my reputation and my lifetime of service because I stood up to them. I've spent over 16 years of my life proudly serving in the Army National Guard. I still serve as a major today. I volunteered to deploy to the Middle East twice. I've served in Congress now for nearly 7 years, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, and I am not afraid to openly express my love for our country. But if they can falsely portray me as a traitor, then they can do it to anyone.
You know, it's interesting, too, because why didn't Hillary Clinton call Bernie Sanders a Russian asset?
Right.
I mean, he literally was in the Soviet Union in the 80s, extolling the virtues of their lovely chandeliers and enjoyable, affordable puppet shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
Why did she choose to go after her? But it was so... I mean, Tulsi is no threat to her or any Democratic challenger to be president.
The remarkable thing is the D.C. press corps still running interference for Hillary Clinton because they still need to prop up the narrative that somehow Hillary Clinton both won and the election was unfairly stolen from her. It's like Schrodinger's cat. But okay. But I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about for the layman, and this show is truly for the layman. Joy Behar on The View, speaking to... hate has no home here, champagne socialists in the suburbs.
She tweeted back and called Hillary a warmonger. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that does not do anything for me. She hasn't denied it. She hasn't said anything in her tweets. How dare you? That's outrageous. Of course I'm not. Just...
Okay, Joy. So Tulsi Gabbard has to answer the question, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Really? I mean, they're so historically ignorant. They are adopting positions that if you put in a different context, they would find abhorrent. She hasn't denied it. That's indicative of her being guilty of it. Isn't that remarkable? President Trump certainly thought so. Here's what he had to say about Hillary and her conspiracy theories with Hannity last night.
Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset, and that Jill Stein is a Russian agent. And I said, wait a minute, it took me 2.5 years I wish she would have said that earlier because people would have realized she's crazy. She's crazy.
She's crazy. The she is Hillary Clinton. And he also referred to her as sick. That's not how other members of the press are reporting it, including the political press, not just, daffy talk show hosts like Joy Behar. Washington Post columnist Jonathan Capehart.
Yeah.
He claimed Saturday that Clinton did not name names when she alleged the Russians were grooming Gabbard. That was after Nick Merrill, Hillary Clinton's spokesman, already conceded it. He was asked directly whether Hillary Clinton was referring to Gabbard, and his response was, if the nesting doll fits. That's a concession that she was talking about Gabbard. Of course she was. When Hillary Clinton says there's a Russian asset and doesn't say anybody's name, and Tulsi Gabbard goes, how dare you call me a Russian asset? That's NBC News' Jonathan Allen saying the same thing, like, oh, Tulsi Gabbard has a guilty conscience because she's volunteering herself as the target. No. Hillary Clinton volunteered her as the target. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Michael Warren Davis. He's the editor of Crisis Magazine. He's also a contributor to American Conservative, Spectator USA, and First Things. Michael, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you take a bit of a different tack, and I've addressed this as well, but I'll let you make your case. You're addressing the Tulsi Gabbard flap with Hillary Clinton from sort of the conservatives have fallen in deep lake with Tulsi Gabbard because she's disliked by CNN and the New York Times, and she's liked by Trey Gowdy.
Yeah, I make a point of never having any sympathy for any politician.
That's a good point.
Because anyone who volunteers for the limelight, I think that, you put yourself in the line of fire. So with Representative Gabbard, a lot of conservatives, obviously, and with very good reason, they have a lot of sympathy for her foreign policy positions, especially people like me, first-hour Trump supporters who have been sort of disappointed with his handling of the Syria issue, for instance. They see Representative Gabbard as kind of a second chance in a way, and as proof that even if Trump had John Bolton on his staff a little too long, there is still popular support for a less interventionist foreign policy. But at the end of the day, all of these woes that betide Mrs. Gabbard, they could all be solved pretty expeditiously by switching to the Republican Party. And, but the reason that she would receive a true hero's welcome. She could win any political office she wanted. Imagine Tulsi Gabbard running as a Republican for president to succeed Trump with Trump's blessing. She would be a shoo-in. And that's what I recommended that she do. At the beginning of the cycle, I wrote another piece for the Spectator USA, suggesting that she do just that she keep her powder dry and run as Trump's successor. But the reason she doesn't do that is because she buys into the whole the Democrats' abortion extremism and their support for radical gender ideology. So that's her priority. So as badly as she claims to be treated by the left-wing media and the Democratic Party, she's not going anywhere because she's a true believer. She's a progressive. And it irks me that conservatives seem to overlook that because she's more or less solid on foreign policy, and I think that the fact that she's quite attractive has a much larger role to play in it than we'd like to
Right. If she was
admit.
300 pounds, nobody would care. But she's Palin-esque. You wrote that about that. And she's a surfer chick, and she's, an active member of the U.S. Armed Forces, and that attracts people to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
and especially the armed forces thing. I mean, it is legit. That's a really terrific quality in an office holder, but it's not everything.
No, and it's sort of a continuation on what I think is a bit of more than a bit of a problem in our politics, and there's always going to be an element, but I think it's been it's increased exponentially in the social media era, which is the cult of personality politics, and that's what you're saying. She's perfectly affable, presentable. She communicates effectively. She's got these attributes that you mentioned. And so I'm going to look past the fact that she's just another sort of standard issue champagne socialist.
Yeah, that's right. I remember very particularly National Review, which I grew up reading. You guys probably grew up reading. It is, the Bible of American conservatism, as they say, and they published a ridiculous piece that I cited in my article, saying, if Tulsi Gabbard wants to appeal to pro-life Democrats, which is indeed a struggling, a large but struggling minority in the Democratic Party that has been completely bowled over by the radically pro-choice Democratic establishment. If she wants to appeal to pro-life Democrats, she should do this and she should do this. And it was one of these very highbrow think pieces. But then the last debates rolled around, and Tulsi says, I want to codify Roe v. Wade. I want to guarantee forever a woman's right to choose through the second trimester, but not the third trimester. In my book, a Republican who called himself pro-life because he didn't support late-term abortion would be laughed off the stage. But even conservatives, even pro-life journalists, are willing to stick their neck out for her because she only supports abortion in the first and second trimester. It's a very, very strange double standard.
It's a real comment on how far left the Democrats have gone, pro-infanticide party, as you're sort of indicating. But you're right, of course. It's just, it seems to me, speaking of National Review, they lost the Buckley distinction. Buckley's always said you need to leave enough room for people to come over to your side. But they actually have to come over to your side. Tulsi Gabbard, just being attacked by Hillary Clinton isn't coming over to our side necessarily. Those are two separate things.
Yeah, you would. If you would hope that there was room in the Democratic Party for someone that would criticize Hillary Clinton, and if there's not, then that's a reflection on the Democratic Party. And I don't think that we needed any more evidence that it's a festering you-know-what hole full of far-left ideologues. But again, no one is mandating that Tulsi Gabbard belong to the Democratic Party. She can leave anytime she wants. And if she chooses not to do so because she adheres to the left-wing ideology, by and large, or because she's concerned about her political future and she knows that she would have no hope as an independent, well, sorry, you don't get. I'm not going to give
enough.
Anyone a shoulder to cry on. No, it's not good enough. If you wanted that, the true, if she is a politician of principle, and I believe that at some level she is, then she should make a truly brave stance and say, I'm leaving the Democratic Party. I'm going to stand on principle and not on the donor class.
Well, who do you think is more likely to have a transformation? Because maybe we could have a trade here. Who is more likely to have an epiphanal moment, Tulsi Gabbard or Mitt Romney? I'd be willing to trade straight up those two, and get put
Pierre Delecto.
Yeah, put her under the tutelage of Trey Gowdy and see how she develops over the next 30 years. Mitt Romney's, he's a short timer.
I really do think that she would have a spectacular career as a Republican. I wouldn't be surprised if she's one of these people that leaves office and then starts getting on the circuit, going to CPAC and Fox News and saying, the Democratic Party that exists today is not the Democratic Party that I joined. But again, when I wrote the article at the beginning, it was over the winter. It was right at the beginning of the cycle, saying, keep your powder dry, wait till 2024. I kind of meant it. I would love to vote for someone like her because she is, in a lot of ways, she's a more coherent, presentable Trumpian figure, but who also has that charisma that will appeal to more centrist and left-wing voters. But as an active member of the U.S. Armed Forces, you really do hope would sort of stay true to the middle America blue guys. You guys are in Illinois, I'm in Michigan. The people that live in our communities. But I don't think she's going to do it. I think that she's too deep in the Democratic machine.
I wanted to get your take on another topic, news that came out this week, finding a survey of Americans that's done annually by a number of organizations. The survey on religious affiliation, finding that in the last decade, the number of Americans identifying as Christian dropped by 12 percentage points, which is pretty substantial, and how you think that will inform our politics going forward.
Well, that was really kind of a crippling blow, I think, to the morale of American conservatives. If you want to put it this way, for the first time in the history of the United States, Since the Declaration of Independence, the majority of Americans are no longer Protestant. 49% of the country is Protestant. I'm a Catholic. The number of Catholics, according to Pew, dropped from 24% to 20%. And there have been all sorts of, now look, I edit a Catholic magazine, so this is more my forte, but,
Right.
I went through the other day and I crunched the numbers and I looked at, how many Catholics, what's the drop in the percentage of Catholics? Okay. How many Catholics actually believe in the dogma of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist? Okay. How many accept the church's teachings on homosexuality and contraception, etc.? And by my number, guys, it comes out in my mind, the percentage of Americans who go to Mass and who fully accept all the teachings of the Catholic Church, I think it's at about 1% of Americans now, which was probably, I would guess, 20, 30%, maybe 50 years ago. And I don't know what it would be for Protestants, but I imagine it's an equally propitious job. As bad as these numbers are, I think that if you dig deeper and see not only who calls themselves Christian, but who really believes in Christian teaching, who really accepts sort of biblical or magisterial teaching, I think it's going to be even lower. And how is this going to affect the news cycle? Well, I'm a social conservative, and I think that you guys are too. And as much as I voted for Trump in the primary when I lived in Massachusetts. I was a first-hour Trump guy, but I got to say, I'm more socially conservative than Trump. I think a lot of Trump voters are more socially conservative than Trump, and that's okay. But it doesn't look good for us going forward. It looks like social issues are gonna take a back seat. And look, this is the point that I always make. When Obergefell versus Hodges. When the Supreme Court decided that gay marriage would be instituted across the country, that was it. There was never any chance of us repealing that. Of course, if the conservative side had won, if the Supreme Court had decided that there isn't a universal right to gay marriage, it wouldn't have even been a stumbling block to the left. They would have gone right back out to the hustings. They would have grabbed their signs. They would have demanded that the Supreme Court change their vote. They would have pushed it through again. They would have fought until they got the result they wanted. For us, as soon as Obergefell was decided, we said, "Oh, well, that's it then. We better move on to the next issue." Social conservatives are chronic defeatists.
Yeah.
And as these battles keep being fought, as the Overton window shifts further and further to the left, as gay marriage is instituted, as abortion rights spread, as faith among the American people continues to decline rapidly, we just sort of roll over and accept it and say, "Well, I hope things don't get any worse." And I don't know. I think in the next one or two election cycles, maybe we focus on Trump and solidifying his victory in the coming election cycle. But I really think we need to start hoping and praying that there is some sort of revival of the socially conservative activist base, because these numbers do not look good, and we need a real kick in the pants if there's going to be anything like social conservatism in the next generation.
Michael Warren Davis, editor of Crisis Magazine, contributor to American Conservative, Spectator USA, and First Things as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friends. Speak soon, I hope.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer.